allegiances and more along ideological lines. So I would have thought that might be quite good. You would have thought, well, that's not so bad for Europe. That sounds quite good. Now, nevertheless, it seems to be the case that for all kinds of reasons, if you look at detailed statistics, which I'm not giving you at the moment, that European politics doesn't seem to resonate with British citizens, or with British citizens, we knew. But increasingly, the popularity of the European project has never been so low as it has been today. We see that with the appalling turnouts at elections, that people just simply do not turn up. Very low turnouts, much lower than the national elections. And we see that in the total unfamiliarity of the names, with the names of European politicians. People rarely, very rarely know their members. Okay, we now know Wim van der Kamp, because isn't it great that Wim van der Kamp, if only Berlusconi would have put all his women in the European Parliament, all the beautiful women, and we've got Wim van der Kamp. And the most amazing thing is that the guy is one of the funniest guys I know. He's not renowned for his beauty. He's renowned for his sense of humor and his sharp wit. And he's not even renowned so much for his heterosexuality either. So what better person to put against Berlusconi than Wim van der Kamp? So that was just one plug for somebody who was not of my party. But normally, I mean, why I'm saying this, making a bit of a joke about it, is that normally people resort to the weirdest kind of things to get people there. But it really just does not resonate. When you go to the pub, or when you go at the school grounds, or if you go at work, people do not talk about European elections like the way they did when Obama was fighting, first with Clinton, and later for the presidency to get a thing. There was a real big fight, and that's something which you really miss. It's not personified, it's not really on the table. Okay, so here is a picture of a town most of you know. Which town is that? Nice. Nice is very nice, like the British say. So there was something called the Nice Treaty. So here you probably can't read it, but for those of you who can read it, these give what I want you to take home from this table. It shows you the weighting Nice gives to the votes of each country. So it shows, so normally you think, well, why do we worry about it, you think? Well, the way we worry about it is because typically small countries used to get an enormous large number of votes, relatively speaking to their population or to the GDP, compared with large countries. So, for example, the Netherlands has 13 votes. Romania has 14 votes. Well, that's half as much as Germany. But Holland is 5 or 6 times as small as Germany. So Holland gets 3 times as much votes. So we, as Dutch, get 3 times as much votes as Germany. If you're in Luxembourg, it's completely ridiculous. They get 4 votes. You say it's not very much, but if you look in terms of the percentage of the population, they get a huge amount of votes. So it used to be the case before the Nice Treaty, or under the Nice Treaty rules. It was even worse. It's getting a bit better. So what we've been trying to do is more votes for bigger member states. So one whole idea of the enlargement project was to try to readdress this balance, because otherwise the support for the European project would lose ground with the large states. Of course, that meant that you had to give more votes for countries like Poland and Turkey as well. So really, the Nice Treaty reallocated votes from the smallest to the biggest member states. Now look carefully what I said before. The small ones, even after Nice, get a disproportionate amount of votes. So before it was even much worse. So this already looks too reasonable for the small votes. You almost feel embarrassed being Dutch. But anyway, that was the whole idea of the Nice Treaty, to reallocate votes from the smallest to the biggest member states, compared with the arrangements under the Treaty of Rome. Now, there's a very clever game theorist. It was a big project, a Finnish guy called Mike Wittgren, a good guy, and he came a lot to us, and also in the Schumann Center where I used to work in Italy. And he uses a lot of game theory, and that suggests that adopting the double majority voting mechanism, which is the one prescribed in the Lisbon Treaty, will, when you compare it with the Nice Treaty, give the large member states much more power, while existing and new small member states lose power. So the idea is that the Lisbon Treaty has been designed to strengthen the grip of the big European incumbent states. That was the deal. That's the idea. Which is strange in a way. I mean, it's understandable, But it's also strange because it's not that strange that you hear a lot of squeaking and a lot of hissing and humming from the smaller states, and that's exactly where this came from. You often hear about reform of the treaties, but this is really what it was all about. So there we see something, and what do you think that is? That's the European Parliament. I think a Dutch architect might have done a better job, but that's the European Parliament. So what's happened to the European Parliament? The European Parliament has always been slightly pathetic. The European Parliament is a joke from a democratic point of view. If we go back to Plato and all the others, the people where, we talk, who really know about democracy, basically the Parliament was a parliament without teeth. So one of the things I wanted the new treaty to do, even though it was rejected, I'm not suggesting that the Dutch or the French rejected the new treaty because of these reasons, but one of the things I wanted to do is to make sure that the European Parliament gets much more teeth vis-a-vis the European Council of Ministers. So let's look at that. So my argument is that using that same theory, that the game theory predicts that the Lisbon Treaty will not do much to give the European Parliament more effective power relative to that of the Council. So the new voting rules we have and the new mechanisms we got in place in the Nice Treaty, according to the best research I know, would really give the larger member states more power. Yes, true, but it's still very unbalanced, is my conclusion. And secondly, we see that although the European Parliament was meant to get much more power, when you talk in terms of effective bargaining strength, this is something which we can make more operational in terms of game theory, the effective power of the Parliament hasn't really gone up as much as more. And that has to do with the fact that the Council still has most of the power in something which is called the Conciliation Committee. Since that has not been there to attack, on paper it looks like the Parliament has been given more power. If you play the games either in a laboratory or in a game-theoretic sense, you see that the European Parliament has not been made stronger relative to the Council of Ministers, so most of the powers. It has not become democratic. The democratic deficit is still there. It may even become a bit bigger. Now, the Lisbon Treaty does give the European Parliament more power via what is called legislative co-decision. Didn't they not have that before, you'd ask? I mean, Gert and I, we've been both members of Parliament. The whole point of being a member of Parliament in The Hague is that you can make your own laws. And did you not make one of your own laws? Or, yeah, I think, I can't remember what it was, but it was a very important one. I'm not trying to be flippant, but I mean, but that's one of the things, when you're in Parliament, you think that's the most important thing you can do. Because and then in actual fact, in the Dutch Parliament, like in any other Parliament, the highest level of authority, you may not look at it, is the Parliament. Parliaments can send ministers home, parliaments can change bills, they can make bills, they can do whatever they want. That was not the case and is not the case in the European Parliament. So how can you take those suckers serious? Okay, so now they've got a bit of extra power to draft the budget. You think, didn't they have that before? Why the hell did we have to do a whole new treaty to give them that? But the problem is, of course, that the Council of Ministers, the ministers, so these are, for example, all the ministers of finance, all the ministers of transport, all the ministers of the environment, all the ministers of health, they have a monopoly in setting up the resources. So in a sense, what we predict and what is actually looks like is happening is the reform will lead to more conflict between Parliament and Council. But it's not clear that it will give the Parliament extra power. So I'm sorry I'm going to go from some of these details, but I want you to understand why the European Parliament is in such a sorry state. It's not just that we're all anti-European, there's also a reason for it. So let's talk a bit more about this democratic deficit. So here's the democratic deficit. Now, this democratic deficit, we have all kinds of things which need to be done. So when we used to say that, and it's still the case, 80% or 90% of laws come from Brussels. So then you should feel really pretty small and pretty humble when you're in The Hague. But it doesn't feel like that. Now, why is it? What happens if a decision is made in Brussels? Then it has to be transposed, is the terminology which political scientists use. It has to be written into Dutch law, German law, all the Danish law, English law, Greek law, all the different countries.